Hello learners and welcome back. Today we are going to look at Social Studies grade 9 paper, and we are going to address both part A, section A, which has 20 marks, and section B, which has 80 marks. Let us get started. Question 1 says, which of the following pairs of countries represents a developing and a developed nation respectively? So we are supposed to look at the one which has a developing and a developed nation. And option A, we have Kenya and Germany. That is correct because Kenya is a developing country while Germany is a developed country. And the others, for option B, it reverses the required order. Why? Because Germany is not supposed to come before Kenya, because we are supposed to start by identifying the developing and then the developed nation. And then option C and D contain two developing countries because South Africa, Kenya, and Uganda are all developing countries. So the correct option is A. And then question number 2, which of the following African civilizations was known for its great stone buildings and trade in gold? So we have the 4 options there. And the African civilization that was known for stone buildings and trade in gold was Great Zimbabwe, because it was famous for its large stone structure and also gold trade. And the others, including Congo Kingdom, Nubia, and Egypt, they had important civilizations, but the description specifically identifies a Great Zimbabwe. So one of the things we should always remember is that in Great Zimbabwe, there was great stone walls, and they were involved in trading gold. And then question number 3, which one of the following instruments is correctly matched with the element of weather it measures? So let us look at the options. Number 1, we have a barometer, and it says rainfall amount. That is not correct because a barometer is used to measure the atmospheric pressure. And then we have a thermometer. It says atmospheric pressure. That is not correct because you all know a thermometer is used to measure temperature. Then number 3, we have an anemometer, wind speed. That is correct. An anemometer is used to measure wind. So that is the correct option, option C. But option D, we have a rain gauge. It says temperature. That is not correct because a rain gauge is used to measure rainfall. And then let us go to question number 4. It says Kenya became a republic on. So I'm sure that we all know the answer to that because Kenya became a republic on 12 December 1964. You see, because Kenya became a republic exactly 1 year after gaining independence. So it was in 1964. Independence in 1963, but a republic in 1964. You see? And then other things you can remember when it comes to the history of Kenya is that 1st June is associated with Madaraka Day, and the other dates are incorrect because 1st June is the only one that is associated with Madaraka Day. That is something very, very important to remember. Always remember independence 1963 December, a republic 1964 December. Question number 5. Which one of the following latitudes measures 23.5 south? Now, that is a Tropic of Capricorn. That is the Tropic of Capricorn. While the Tropic of Capricorn is located at approximately 23.5 degrees south, and the others, the Tropic of Cancer is 23.5 degrees north. The Atlantic Circle is 63.5 degrees south, and the prime meridian measures longitude. You see, so always remember that Cancer north, Capricorn south. Never forget that to answer those questions correctly. Then question number 6. The arm of the government that interprets law is called, that is the judiciary. Judiciary is the one that is involved with the law. It interprets and also applies the law. The others, the legislature is used to make laws. This is where we have the MPs, and the MPs, they are the legislatures. They mostly make laws. And then the executive implements them. You see, this is where the police come in, they enforce the law. Always remember, legislature making the law, judiciary interpreting, and the executive implementing. And then let us go to question 7, and it says that the best way of encouraging people in Kenya to obey the law is, we have option A. So this one you are supposed to think. We are supposed to think which is the best way to encourage people to observe the law. We have A. A says employing more police officers. That is not correct because that is about enforcement. We employ more police officers to enforce the law, but not to encourage people to obey the law. Then we have option B, rewarding people who obey the law. That is also mainly about, it is not about understanding the law. When you reward people, it doesn't mean the others are going to understand why it is important to observe the law. And then option C, educating people on the importance of observing the law. That is the correct option, because when you educate people on the importance of observing the law, it helps the citizens to understand why laws should be obeyed voluntarily without them being forced. The other option, option D, is also not correct because keeping lawbreakers in prison is about implementing. You're only implementing, but it does not mean that people are going to obey. Let us go to question number 8. Which one of the following is not a responsibility of a Kenyan citizen? Being dishonest, paying taxes, obeying laws, being patriotic. I'm sure that kind of question everyone will get correct, because being dishonest is not a responsibility of a Kenyan citizen, but all the others are responsibilities of Kenyan citizens. Then question number 9. The highest court in Kenya is? So which is the highest court in Kenya? Now that is, the highest court in Kenya is called a Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is the one that is rated high than all the others. You see why? Because the Court of Appeal is below the Supreme Court. The High Court and the Magistrate Courts are also lower courts. So always remember that the highest court is the Supreme Court. There is no other one beyond that. So when the Supreme Court makes a judgment, you cannot appeal. It gets to that. Then question number 10. Which one of the following physical features is shared by many countries in Eastern Africa? So we are talking about Eastern Africa, and we are supposed to check at the physical feature that is shared by many countries in Eastern Africa. Now, here the correct answer is the Rift Valley, because the Great Rift Valley crosses many East African countries. The Great Rift Valley is not just in Kenya, but it is across most of the East African countries. So this is the physical element that is shared. And the others, like Lake Victoria, is shared mainly by Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And then Mount Elgon is shared by Kenya and Uganda, and not all countries border the Indian Ocean, you see. But the Great Rift Valley crosses most of the East African countries, so that is the correct option. Then question number 11. Which one of the following is not an arm of the government in Kenya? We have the judiciary, the cabinet, the executive, and the legislature. We had talked about this one earlier, and here the correct answer is cabinet. Why? Because Kenya's 3 arms of government include the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. But the cabinet forms part of the executive. So the cabinet is elected by the executive, so it is just part of the executive, but it is not an arm of the government. Question 12. In question 12, we are told to use the mountain vegetation below to answer the questions. And we have that vegetation which has markings Q and P. Then we are asked the vegetation zone marked P is called. Now, that vegetation marked P is called a heath and moorland. Now, that vegetation marked P is option A, heath and moorland. Why? Because zone P is above the forest and bamboo zones and below the snow and bare rock zone, you see. And the others, for example, bamboo occurs lower down, snow and bare rocks are near the summit, and the savanna occurs near the mountain base. So you can look at this option, you have to know where they occur. And then question number 13. We are told to study the map below and use it to answer questions 13 to 16. So we have the map of Africa there, and we are going to start with question 13. It says, the climate zone marked N is called, so we have N here, that is called the tropical climate. Why? Because zone N is located on the eastern side of Madagascar. That part there, that country there is Madagascar, and on the eastern side of Madagascar we have a tropical climate because that part experiences a warm tropical climate with considerable rainfall. And the others are not a major desert, Mediterranean or high mountain region. You see, those are not the characteristics of the eastern side of Madagascar. You will not find desert there or Mediterranean or high mountain region. Then question number 14. Which of the following countries does not experience desert climate? We have Congo, Libya, Chad, and Egypt. There the correct option is Congo. Why? Because Congo has mainly equatorial and tropical climates rather than desert climate. But Chad, Libya, and Egypt contain extensive desert areas. So always remember that Congo mainly has equatorial and tropical climates, and there is no desert climate like other nations including Libya, Egypt, and Chad. Then question 15. Name the vegetation zone marked X. The vegetation zone marked X, you can see it there. Now, that is the Mediterranean climate. Why? Because zone X is the northwestern African part where Mediterranean climate occurs. And the other options, desert climate is further inland, savanna occurs further south, mountain climate is limited to highlands, and this is something that you should always use to remember, that Mediterranean climate occurs around the Mediterranean coast, like in this option. Then next, let us go to question number 16. And question 16 says, the ocean current marked S on the map is called. So we have S, and S is above there. Now that is the cold Canary Current. Why? Because the Canary Current flows southwards along the northwestern coast of Africa, where you see that point marked S. And the other options, the Mozambique Current is on the southeast coast. And then the Guinea Current is warm, and it is found near the West African Gulf of Guinea. Then the Benguela Current is on the southwest coast. So these are very important to always remember. Question number 17. Which one of the following list influences the population distribution in Africa? Option A, modern forms of communication. Option B, climate. Option C, relief. And option D, soil. The correct option there is A, modern forms of communication. Why? Because climate, relief, and soil directly influence where people live more strongly. So, suitable climate and flat land and fertile soil encourage dense settlements, and therefore the correct option there is option A. So, question 18. Which chapter of the Constitution talks about rights and freedoms of individuals? That is chapter 4. Chapter 4 is the chapter of the Constitution contains the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is the one that talks about the rights and freedom of individuals, and it is found in chapter 4 of the Constitution. Then chapter 6, the other option, chapter 6 of the Constitution talks about leadership and integrity. Chapter 9 talks about the executive, and chapter 14 talks about national security. So very important to remember. The Bill of Rights, you should always remember it is in chapter 4 because that is a very common question. Then question number 19. Which one of the following is not a stage of development of early man? And we have the options there. We have A, Middle Stone Age, B, Late Stone Age, C, Young Stone Age, and D, early Stone Age. I have never heard about young Stone Age. You see, the recognized stages are the early, middle, and the late Stone Ages. Therefore, the young Stone Age is the wrong option. Therefore, C is the correct answer. And then question 20. Which of the following is not a cause of conflict in the society? We have number 1, discrimination, and B, poverty, C, unequal distribution of resources, and D, upholding the rule of law. That is very simple because everything else there will cause conflict except upholding the rule of law. When people respect the rule of law, that is going to prevent and resolve conflict rather than causing it. But the others, including discrimination, poverty, and unequal distribution of resources, can actually cause conflict. And with that, we are done with section A.